Storms are loud, not a little loud, a lot loud. And I grew up with them. Grew up here in Oklahoma, grew up around them, grew up in a small town. That small town, like, it's formative. It's a thing. I know what tornadoes smell like. I know what the sky looks like when a storm's coming in. I know what the cold wind feels like rolling in when that cold front meets that warm front and it causes all the things. I know some of the mechanics of tornadoes. There's a reason why the National Weather Service is right here in Oklahoma. There's a reason why in Oklahoma we pay our weathercasters, our weather people, more than anybody else pays them. And we have people who have advanced degrees in weather predicting. We have all these things because weather it's almost like a sport here. It is significant and substantial, and it is a formative part of our lives. It's so formative even that my hometown has an underground school. The elementary school is underground, and it was the storm shelter for the entire city that I lived in. So when the tornado sirens went off, we all collected at the elementary school, and we would walk in there, we'd walk down the ramp, and we would see all of our classrooms. We would stay there, and it was funny because there was this routine where my dad would stay up at the top and they would watch for the storms. And when I was a little kid, I was underground. My first storm that I remember, I was downstairs in the classroom, sitting quiet, wanting to stay away from all of it because I was uncertain. And my fifth storm, I was a lot more curious. And by my 10th storm, I was up there above ground with my dad watching the field. And I can remember one particular time that we watched a tornado cross a field about a mile away from us. That's some formative stuff. It is like personal, visceral, deep stuff. And the thing that I want to think about today is how that progression worked in my life. Because for those of you that don't live in Oklahoma, and for the conversations I've had with people not from Oklahoma, they always want to ask about storms. They always want to ask about what it's really like. They want to ask what that feels like, what it sounds like. They want to ask all those questions. And here's the thing that I want you to think about from the very beginning. Storms are real and storms are powerful, but storms are also knowable. And that was my thing. Like, even as a 5-year-old, they were knowable. My dad would sit there and watch the storm. And for anybody who'd never been around storms like that before, for anybody who'd never been around them, that would probably be terrifying to sit there and watch him watch the storm. It's like, you should be underground. We've all been around those people. It's like, hey, if there's a storm warning, they're grabbing every blanket and every mattress and everything, and they're barricading themselves inside of a hallway and doing all the things. And that's fine. But in the beginning, you barricade yourself as soon as the alarm goes off. But later, when you recognize it and when you know it, you can see the progression that happens. And even for anybody who's never been in a tornado or seen anything like this, even on our news stations, they will tell you 10:09 p.m. it's going to hit Lincoln County. At 10:10 it's going to hit Sparks. At 10:14 it's going to hit Prague. At 10:19 it's going to hit Payton. And they would walk through and tell you what that progression is because it's knowable. And because it was knowable, we didn't overreact to them. I would sit out there and I watched them cross the field. I watched them break down power lines. I watched electricity flying into the air from a mile away. I watched the dirt and the debris going up inside of the cloud. I watched all of those things, and it was fascinating, and we didn't overreact to them. And the funny thing is, there's actually something sort of exciting about that familiarity. Now that I live in a city, we don't really have those same things. There's not a place where I can sit and watch tornadoes spin across the pastures. I don't have that option here, and I kind of miss it. There's a part of me that still wants to stand at the top of the ramp in Prague, Oklahoma at the elementary school and watch the storms boil. When Twister came out years ago, people asked what it was really like. Because in Twister, they saw cows flying around and cars flying around and all nails and shovels and whatever else flying around. And they would ask me what it was like because I'd seen it, because I'd felt it, because I've been around it. I've been in those fields, and I'd lived in that zip code. And here's a thought I want you to think about as I talk about tornadoes. Until we can recognize the signs, we will continue to be reactive. Here's what I mean, and follow along. My 16-year-old, it's a great kid. Sometimes he gets out of bed in the morning, and when he gets out of bed in the morning, he walks into the living room. You feel the cold front come with him. You feel that bad mood that he woke up in. And whether he realizes it or not, that's when the cascade starts. And the funny thing about those bad moods whenever we wake up in them is that and I want to bring this back to the beginning. Until we can recognize the signs, we are doomed to be reactive. That bad mood he wakes up in, he doesn't know it, but it's the cascade of a bad day. And it will continue to be the cascade of a bad day until he starts to do a few really important things. And I want to say this first, and I've had this conversation with him. One day he woke up, he's in a bad mood. Everybody else feels it. Everybody else sees it. And I stepped in one morning to try and help him to navigate it. And I asked him, I said, what's going on? I don't know. What do you mean? Something's going on with you this morning. And we started to kind of talk about it and unpack it. And I told him, I said, in these days, whenever you wake up, here's what I want you to start to do when you wake up, when you get up in the morning, when you are starting your day. Can you check in with yourself enough? Can you be familiar enough with yourself that on those mornings where you wake up and something just feels wrong, that you can start to see that? I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to jump ahead and have a solution for it. I don't need all that. Let's just start with seeing it. Can you see it? Because if you can start to be aware enough that you can see it, you are on your way to stopping the cascade that follows it. And after a little bit of time of being able to see it, then the next part comes into play. You wake up and you go, oh, I don't feel quite right this morning. I'm in a bad mood. That's the next part. You've named it. You've named what it is that's going on in you. So the beginning is just being aware of it, seeing it, knowing it's there. The second is naming it, recognizing I'm tired, I'm grumpy, I'm angry, I'm stressed out, I'm whatever it is. But you get to the point where you can begin to name that thing that's going on inside of you. Because the reality is everybody else around you feels it. And a lot of the people around you may even be able to name it also. But until you can name it, you can't stop that cascade. Until you can start to see it, until you can start to name it, you continue to be reactive. You continue to be the victim of that emotion. Then there's the third part. The third part is recognizing it. Recognizing it as being able to look at it and wake up and go, I don't feel quite right today. I'm in a bad mood. And the recognizing it part of it comes into play when you say, I slept badly last night. I really need some breakfast. This is what's going on. And you start to recognize the things that you can do that stops the cascade. It's the thing that short circuits all of the negative things that want to follow that bad mood. Does that make sense? Because at that point, you stop being a victim of that bad mood. In that moment, you can see it, you can name it, you can recognize it. And whenever you can recognize it, you can respond to it. You can address it. And the truth is, that's something that happens over the course of months. That's not a thing that's fast. For my son, we probably started this conversation when he was in 7th grade. For him, it wasn't step 1, step 2, step 3, and I've got it. It was training wheels of step 1. And in those training wheels of step 1, he would fail or he would miss it. He would not recognize it. But in that time and habit and practice, he began to. And then he could respond to it. He could do something about it. He could stop that cascade. So over months, I watched this pattern with my son. And where I could, I helped him navigate it. Where I could, I would just ask him to slow down. Where I could, I would ask him questions. I didn't give him all the answers. I would just try to do what I could to help him navigate it. Because when you start looking for it, Here's the best analogy I have for it. When you start looking for it, here's what starts to happen. You've been looking at cars for a long time and you want to and you buy a white car and you buy a white Chevrolet. Then as soon as you buy that white Chevrolet, it seems like everywhere you go, you start to see that white Chevrolet. This is a little bit of that same thing. When you start to look for it, when you start to recognize it, when you start to deal with these steps in this process, you start to see it more readily because you're more aware of all of it. And instead of being reactionary, you can respond to it well. Now I want to bring this back to historic. We're going to go a little bit old school for you. The Romans had a discipline. Roman times, thousands of years ago, they had a discipline. It's called prosoche. And what that discipline is it actually means continuous attention. Now, Stoicism was kind of the thing in those days, and it was the operating system for a lot of Roman leaders. And they believed that a man who couldn't control his own mind wasn't fit to lead. Let that settle in for a minute. It's not an accusation. That is a statement that has thousands of years of history behind it. The man who couldn't control his own mind wasn't fit to lead. To be reactive was to be considered slave-like. It's not what a leader did. Leaders weren't reactive. To be intentional was the mark of a free man. Now, as I talk about history, don't check out. Apply this. Think about this. Overlay this on yourself, just like I'm trying to overlay this on myself right now. Marcus Aurelius, he wrote in Meditations about naming your intention before the day begins. Know what kind of person you intend to be before the noise starts. Holy smokes. If I did that, I would act a lot different in traffic. I would act a lot different in every line that I'm in. I would act a lot different in a lot of situations. If I would take the time to know what kind of person I intend to be before the noise starts. Probably going to get this name a little bit wrong. Epictetus taught that it isn't what happens to you, but how you choose to respond that shapes a life. The sentence before the conversation was the embodiment of that, the response before the reaction. What we're talking about with see, name, recognize, and what we're talking about with Marcus Aurelius, what we're talking about with Epictetus is the same practice, different century. They were seeing it, naming it, recognizing it before they ever opened their mouths, before they ever said a word. They were recognizing that standing there with their toothbrush in their mouth in the morning before their day had even really gotten underway. And they recognized human nature and tendencies and built practices around them. Now we call it neuroscience and know the biology and mechanics behind it. But then it was just how to be a free man. If I know the kind of person that I want to be, I'm going to name that before the noise of the day starts. Sitting in a meeting with some of my close friends a couple weeks ago, and I'm kind of in this new season of work where I'm just learning a lot of new things. I'm learning different ways of leading, different ways of responding, and different ways of just so much of life, having to learn. And in the conversation, I asked for a specific task, talking to my friends, and one of them said, well, are you asking for this? And as soon as I heard it, I got insecure because I'm always afraid of asking for too much, because I'm always afraid of being an inconvenience, because I'm always afraid of coming off as demanding. I kind of retreated inside of myself and I just kind of blew past the question. Said, oh, I don't really know. And I kind of moved on to the next topic and I kind of left that behind. And as I was sitting there doing it, all of a sudden I recognized that I was just being insecure. And I was letting my insecurity be the thing that defined and dominated that conversation. So I came back about 4 or 5 minutes later and I just told him out loud, hey, when you asked me that question, I kind of got insecure and I wanted to admit that I got insecure. And I'm just going to tell you that this is what I'm thinking. And my friend looked at me and just said real clearly, in the future, just trust us to answer yes and no. Trust us to say what's too much. Trust us to know ourselves well enough to respond. trust us. And that was in a relationship, in a conversation as adults, as humans, where I was willing to say out loud that thing I was insecure about. And they were willing, as people who I trusted, for us to be able to deal with that together. And I'm not going to say that's like the fully realized version of everything, but I'm saying that is the hope and the goal and the intention of exactly what I'm talking about with my youngest son. I saw it, saw that insecurity. I named that insecurity. And I said what that insecurity was encouraging me to do. And all of a sudden, my friends were able to step in, even in a way that I couldn't. They were able to step in and encourage me to do the right thing. And that was the next step in that process. And the thing I want us to think about is that the practice isn't about saying the insecure or ugly thought out loud. That's the byproduct. The practice is seeing, naming, and recognizing. Seeing what's happening, being able to name what's happening, and recognizing the ways that you need to respond to it. Not react, not overreact, not get crazy, just respond. So here's the thing that I want us to think about that is, I'm trying to make this as practical as humanly possible. And I'm just going to say this real plainly. The world we live in right now is not very good at conflict. We suck at it. And in order for that to change, we have to start with that first sentence. Once we're able to see it, once we're able to name it, once we're able to recognize it, and then it's writing that one sentence that says, what do I actually want from this conversation? And the answer isn't win. The answer is, what do I want? It's not about winning. It's not about being right. It's what do I want when this is over? And I'm going to tell you what my answer is. And part of why I'm saying it out loud is because I want this to be true. What I want when this is over is I want to find what is true. That's why I sit in this chair every episode. This is why I wrestle with the things that I wrestle with, because I want to find that thing that's true. I don't want to keep making the same mistakes again and again. I don't want to keep blowing up the decisions that I make because of bad habits. At 54, my hope and my desire and my intention is that I continue to improve. Anybody who's spent much time around me has heard me say this phrase: time is the great equalizer. I really do believe that. When I say time is the great equalizer, it means that over the course of time, you see the patterns that are apparent in your world. I have friends that I've been friends with for 35 years. I have friends that I've been friends with for 45 years. My friend Chad, who I've been friends with since 1995, 30 years ago. I doubt there's much of anything that I could tell Chad that would surprise him. And I doubt there's much of anything that he could tell me that would surprise me. And it's not because we are particularly, I think we're transparent with each other, but I think that it's a transparency that's available to all of us. And I'm not saying that we're particularly smart. I'm saying that just sheer volume and length of time turns into equalizing what to expect. I had guys that I traveled with for 15 years, and one of my friends, I've seen him in his best and I've seen him at his worst. I've seen him in his best moments. I've seen him at his worst moments. I've seen him in all-time great moments in his life, and I've seen him at his hardest moments. And I know who he is. And I doubt there's much of anything that he could do that would surprise me. And that's really valuable. Time is that great equalizer. And time is the great equalizer that we're able to see, name, and recognize those that are around us. And we can see, name, and recognize who we can trust, who we can rely on, who we can be vulnerable with, who we can live life with, who we can do all these things with. So this exercise, while it starts with us, it radiates outward. And it doesn't radiate outward so we can judge everybody around us. It radiates outward so that we can be wise. And I want you to think about this. The big moments in parenting and friendships and business, they are the byproduct of 1,000 small moments, just like we're talking about. They are the byproducts of time, effort, energy, and habit. And I want you to think about this. And I want us to take 5 steps backward from all of this philosophical stuff that we're talking about. And I want you to think about this in terms of the world we live in. We have become a reactive culture because it's what we've built and rewarded: the fastest, Loudest response wins. If you have any doubt, just look at social media. If you have any doubt, watch the news. If you have any doubt, read online, read articles. The fastest, loudest response wins, and escalation is the default. And most people walk into conflict already loaded, no clarity on what they want. And every day as a result, we see road rage, we see full meltdowns over a merge, we see comment sections, any comment section, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, anywhere where people will say anything in order to win. Someone losing it on a customer service rep over a coupon, parents screaming at refs at kids' sports games. I grew up having to ref third grade basketball, and I can remember having a father of a third grader screaming at me as a ref because the other team's player had traveled. This child's 8 years old and they're learning to play basketball. And this parent is screaming, this dad is screaming, and he's screaming so much so that I can see the spit coming out of his mouth as he screams. He is losing his mind over an 8-year-old trying to learn how to dribble. Stranger blowing up in a checkout line. I see that too much. That guy that honks the second the light turns green. All of it. And one of the very natural outcomes that we see these days is we see two people yelling at each other, screaming at each other, and somehow pretending like that's communication. That's not a conversation, that's a collision. And we need to be better. And I say, we need to be better. But when we live with ourselves a little bit, when we're familiar with our tendencies, when we take the time to see ourselves as knowable in the same way those storms are knowable. Remember the storms? Storms can destroy us, but they are knowable. That's where it starts. And it doesn't start with the other person fixing themselves. It starts with us dealing with ourselves. It's not about the conversation. It's not about the conflict. And it's not about the overreaction. It's starting with being able to see what's happening, name what's happening, and recognize what's happening. And if we can start to do that before any of that begins, and we can lean into that one sentence that says the kind of person that we want to be, traffic is different. Lines at the store are different. Red lights are different. Everything starts to shift. It works in conflict. It works in business. It works in presenting. And it works because it works on you first. It works on me first. And this is where I say it messy before anybody might assume that it was tidy all along. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.